Hello and welcome into the Locked On Wolves podcast. We are live following the Timberwolves loss to the Portland Trailblazers on Monday night. Marney Gellner of Bally Sports North joins the show to break down the game. The Locked On Wolves postcast starts right now.
You are Locked On Wolves postcast, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves, and I'm joined, as always, by Marney Gellner of Bally Sports North to talk about the Timberwolves' loss to the Blazers, the second loss in Portland in the last, 3 days, the last two tries. This was, we talked on Saturday, run of competitive games. The Wolves just kind of fell short. This game, not as much. The first half was competitive. The Wolves were in it. But when it was all said and done, this was, again, all about Portland's backcourt getting what they wanted. They end up winning by 21 is the final. Dame has a big night once again against the Wolves. I don't know. I think that's the 20-second summary of this one, right, Marnie?
Oh, for sure. Damian Lillard hit 11 threes. The Timberwolves as a team hit 10 threes. And there were times when Dame was, he had to be 2-3 feet behind the line, and he was just heat checking, and he was hitting them. So there's not a lot you can do. Sometimes defensively, there were times when they needed to be better against him, but it was one of those nights where you're like, okay, one of the greatest shooters in the NBA ever is hot. But yet, somehow, the Wolves were still in this late in the third quarter, and Chauncey Billups called the timeout. And the score was 88-78 at that point. Wolves had a lot of momentum. They were knocking on the door of a single-digit game. Chauncey Billups calls the timeout, and the Blazers went on a 16-2 run. And to me, that was it, because that was like the last gasp that the Wolves had. They didn't have anything left after that. By the time the run was over, it was 104-80. And it happened in the blink of an eye. And it wasn't just Dame. So I feel like there were two storylines tonight. One was Damian Lillard. The other was that late third quarter run. And other than that, man, it was Portland's night tonight.
Yeah, the Wolves had gotten to within 10, like you said, and it really did feel like it was kind of like the Jalen Noel plus the starters group. I guess Nas was on the floor for most of that run. And it did feel like up until that point, there were a lot of similarities to Saturday's game where it was like just offense back and forth, bucket after bucket. The second quarter especially was like both teams scored 30-plus points in that quarter, and it was a track meet. And the Wolves, we talked about this Saturday too, the Wolves overall play a lot faster than Portland. But because the Wolves just couldn't contain the ball defensively, Portland ended up playing faster too, because they were just taking what the Wolves gave them, and that was either driving lanes, especially Saturday when they got to the free throw line a bunch. And in this case, it was a lot of driving and kicking to Damian Lillard. And then also, like you said, him just pulling up from wherever he wanted. All the threes he missed, I'm pretty sure were basically heat check threes. Like if he was open at all, he made the shot, and he was making shots that he wasn't even entirely open. The Wolves started guarding him out to 29, 30 feet, and he just started pulling from even deeper. So this, certainly part of this was Lillard just being unconscious. I think there also certainly was an element to the Wolves defensively, kind of this same song and dance of poor perimeter defense. The Wolves tried Jaden McDaniels on Lillard. They tried Austin Rivers got a shot. Kyle Anderson got his shot. And it didn't really seem to matter. It was like just whatever the Wolves tried to do, it was a combination of those two things. It was Lillard being great and the Wolves being subpar, I think would be the nice way of putting it in terms of their perimeter defense.
It's something that is going to need to be addressed, and it's something that Taurean Prince, for one, would help with, and he's still out with that shoulder issue. But this is where some of the depth, where it might be on the offensive end, you're missing Jordan McLaughlin, you're missing Karl Anthony Towns. Like he would have helped on Saturday night, I feel like, when the Wolves just kind of ran out of gas on the second night of a back-to-back. And then a night like this, when all you're talking about, Ben, about a guy who can get through screens on the perimeter. That's a Taurean Prince type of defender, which the Wolves don't have, which the Wolves could have really used in a game like this. And how about Dame hitting 11 threes. It was 11 of 17, and he did not play a second in the fourth quarter. All of that damage was done by late in the third. He was even out in the final minutes of the third quarter. So that's a lot of effectiveness through three quarters to not even touch the court in the fourth. But if you don't have that defender that can get through the screens or get around or get, the help defense or the switching or whatever needs to happen on the perimeter, didn't happen effectively enough tonight.
Yeah, and another area the Wolves really struggled once again for the second straight night against Portland was the defensive glass. And that, again, has been a struggle all season. In this game, the Wolves were a minus 17 on the glass. They were exactly that last time out against Portland on Saturday, a minus 17 on the glass. And they did a little better themselves in terms of second chance opportunities, but again, allowed 11 offensive rebounds to Portland. And this is, again, I feel like a broken record, but Portland's not a great rebounding team, right? I mean, they've got Nurkic, and otherwise they don't have a ton of size. Like Jeremy Grant's not a great rebounder for his size and position. And yet the Wolves still, there's obviously Portland's got some athletes and that helps quite a bit, but the Wolves just keep getting beat on the glass. And Rudy, of course, had his 20 boards. Nobody else on the Timberwolves roster had more than 4 rebounds. Rudy Gobert had 20 of the Timberwolves' 37 rebounds, which is just an insane statistic.
And the starters were not good outside of Rudy. I think the other combined starters had 7 rebounds. Yeah, it is the theme, and it's why a big reason why the Wolves brought Rudy in was to solve that rebounding problem, because it got exposed in the playoffs last year against Memphis. That was an area where the Wolves just could not make up ground, was on the boards. And so this was meant to help. And while Rudy has continued to really hold his numbers, his career numbers in rebounding, for some reason the rest of the team just hasn't been able to pick it up. Hopefully it's something they figure out along the way, but to be out rebounded by 17 by the same team in consecutive games is a little alarming.
Let's talk about our title sponsors of the show tonight, and that's our friends at Rocket Money. Do you know how much your subscriptions really cost? Most Americans think they spend around $80 a month on subscriptions, when the actual total is closer to $200+ per month. That's right. You could be wasting hundreds of dollars each month on subscriptions you don't even know about. Rocket Money Podcast, there's this app I love using that takes care of that for me. It's called Rocket Money, formerly known as Truebill. It's an app that shows all your subscriptions in one place and cancels what you don't want for you. Rocket Money can even find subscriptions you don't know you're paying for. You may even find out you've been double charged for a subscription. To cancel a subscription, all you have to do is press cancel, and Rocket Money takes care of the rest. Cancel unnecessary subscriptions with Rocket Money today. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Seriously, it could save you hundreds per year. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Let's talk about Anthony Edwards. This was another uneven performance from Ant. I don't love single game plus minus, individual plus minus. I think it's really noisy. It's not always a great stat. But for what it's worth, Ant was by far the Timberwolves' worst plus minus player on Monday against Portland. It was a minus 25 in 33 minutes. The next worst was Jalen Noel off the bench, who was a minus 19. But the rest of the starters were all far better than Ant in that category. Ant only scored 17 points on 16 shots. He was one of the culprits in terms of perimeter defense. He had that hot streak, I think it was like right around that run in the third quarter where he hit a couple of threes. He was 2 of 6 at the free throw line. We haven't even talked about free throw shooting. That's a team conversation after this game. But for Ant specifically, what's going on? We were worried about Saturday being a back-to-back, but now we're just right back to complete inconsistency from Edwards, I think.
Yeah, and he really had a tough start to the game. He missed his first 3 rim attacks, and he started the game 1 for 6. And I feel like when Ant has to work uphill from the start of a game, he just never really digs himself out of it. A lot of times never finds the rhythm, and that was the case tonight. And one of the things that has kind of bugged me a little bit about his game is that he's calling for a foul call while he's in his shot. Like if he drives to the rim, you can hear him when he's in the air go, hey.
Yeah.
As he's a lot of times drawing contact. Yeah. So I was talking about this actually during the game with Rebecca Brunson. We were just watching it together, and I said, do you think he maybe equates like getting a foul call with respect in the league? For as much emphasis as he puts on it, like he is turning to the refs with his arms in the air, like almost on every single drive when he doesn't get a call, or calling for it in the middle of his shot, which I just find to be just incredible, especially then when you miss it, it rolls off the rim. And then he wasn't making his free throws when he did get the call. It just was kind of all around disastrous the way it was presented. It did not look good. But that he and D'Angelo Russell were really on the refs tonight, asking for the calls, and then the Wolves as a team did not make the free throws. But that while he's laying it up on the rim, and you can, I mean, if you listen for it, you can hear it. I think you know exactly what I'm talking about, Ben. You can hear him go, hey. Like he's calling for that foul call. And maybe if he did a little less of that, maybe the shots would fall a little more often.
Yeah, and it's something this week on Locked On Wolves, I'm going to dig in a little bit on his percentages at the rim. It's something that last year he dipped a little bit from his rookie year at the rim, and it's concerning given his size, his athleticism, his scoring ability in general. And I think we're kind of trending that direction again. I feel like the whistle's gotten a little better for him, than it was last year. But you're right. I mean, it's almost as if even though the whistle's gotten better for him, it seems as though he's expecting more and more and more. And we can who knows when it comes to actual. I mean, I think we all know generally certain guys get a little bit more of a whistle. There is some level there of you get to a certain level, you become an all-star, and you do get a few more calls, whether or not the league would admit that. That's just kind of how it goes. And it's almost like Ant is wanting that respect before he's truly earned it. And yes, everybody knows he's one of the best young, most exciting players and made it into the ESPN top 25 players before the season and the whole thing. But he hasn't been there, done that yet. And like you said, I think if you focus a little bit more on consistency when it comes to, scoring at the rim, or, I would say also effort off the ball defensively. Some of the things we've talked about in the past, I think would go a long way. All right, last thing, the Wolves, the rest of this week, the road trip doesn't get any easier. They're at the Clippers. And I mean, that's, the Clippers are obviously always a tough out. And then Friday night in Oklahoma City against the Thunder team, who, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I think, had 40+ again tonight and is just one of the best players in the league right now. And obviously the Thunder just beat the Wolves a couple weeks ago. So the road trip doesn't get easier. What are we looking for Wednesday against the Clippers? Is it just, simply better effort, competing on the glass a little bit more? What's the one thing they didn't do over these two games in Portland that we need to see here the rest of this week?
Man, just one thing?
As many as you want to list, because there's plenty to pick from.
It's just funny, though, how quickly things change, because that Friday night win in Utah for the Wolves to start off this 5-game road trip with that win was really a solid all-around, you could feel really good about this game. And then even the loss at Portland was wow, second night of a back-to-back, I get it, we lost, but man, did we see signs of growth from this Wolves team. That's what we were talking about on Saturday night, the very next game. This is 2 nights later. We're oh, boy, how do we turn this around? The bottom drops out so quickly. But I'll say this about the Clippers. That's a really, really good team when they're healthy. And they were beating Boston by 20 tonight, midway through the fourth quarter. Paul George and Kawhi Leonard both playing, both healthy. Zubac's in there. This is a good Clippers team with everybody on the court. So I guess I'm just looking for compete for the Wolves. And because that involves everything. That involves getting through screens on the perimeter. It involves getting rebounds, limiting second chance points, all of those things, getting off to a good start. I'm looking for competes. And the OKC plays hard all the time. And so if you think on game 5 of this long, dreadful road trip, if you think you're not going to be able to give it 100%, you might get bit in OKC. So you're right, Ben. This road trip does not get any easier. The Wolves got to bring it on Wednesday in LA against Clippers. They got to bring it on Friday in OKC against the Thunder. And there are no two ways about it.
Yeah, we're right back to talking about them just needed to bring the effort that they brought in Utah, to bring the effort that we've seen, really only a handful of times this season. And I think these are all, certainly still winnable games. Absolutely. And of course, also, especially in Oklahoma City, if they can bring that effort from the start and sustain it throughout the game, It does feel like this is what we keep coming back to over the course of the season to this point. A big thank you to listening or for watching as well, the Locked On Wolves postcast. We do go live after each and every Wolves game on the Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube page. Be sure to subscribe there. You can also subscribe and follow Locked On Wolves. The audio from the postcast will be available on all the audio channels here shortly. A big thank you for listening and for watching, and we'll catch you next time.